97 species in genus Tulipa, tulip flower. Tulips, a floral love affair. The tulip. Just the word itself conjures images of vibrant colors, graceful shapes, and the promise of spring. As an avid gardener and lover of all things botanical, I, Ferb Vu, have always held a special fascination for these iconic flowers. Their history, diversity, and sheer beauty never cease to amaze me. A brief history of tulips. Originating from Central Asia, tulips have journeyed through centuries and continents, leaving their mark on cultures and gardens alike. They were first cultivated in Persia, where they were prized for their elegant form and rich symbolism. From there, they made their way to Turkey, becoming a symbol of the Ottoman Empire. It was in the 16th century that tulips arrived in Europe, sparking a phenomenon known as tulip mania in the Netherlands. This period saw tulip bulbs become incredibly valuable, traded at exorbitant prices. Although the bubble eventually burst, the Dutch love affair with tulips endured, and the Netherlands remains the world's leading producer of these beautiful blooms. The diversity of Tulipa. The genus Tulipa is a member of the lily family, Liliaceae, and boasts a remarkable diversity of species and cultivars. They range in color from the purest white to the deepest purple, with countless shades and combinations in between. Some varieties even display intricate patterns and markings, adding to their allure. See full list at monsteraholic.com. Can you plant tulips in the spring? Planting tulips in the spring, I found that it's actually best to plant them in the fall for optimal blooming, as they need a period of cold to thrive. Do deer eat tulips? In my garden, deer seem to avoid tulips, possibly because of their bitter taste or strong scent, which I've seen them bypass for other plants. How to arrange tulips. Arranging tulips in a vase. I discovered that cutting the stems at an angle and keeping them in a mix of cold water with a bit of flower food keeps them looking fresh and vibrant. Where to buy tulips near me? I usually buy tulips from local garden centers or farmers' markets, which often have the freshest and most diverse selection right when I need them. How to put tulips in a vase. When putting tulips in a vase, I've had the best results by filling it with clean, room temperature water and changing the water daily to extend their bloom. Do rabbits eat tulips? Rabbits in my garden have never shown much interest in tulips, unlike other plants which they tend to munch on. How often to water tulips? I've found that tulips need watering when the top inch of soil feels dry, but overwatering can cause the bulbs to rot, so it's a delicate balance. What does the tulip mean? The tulip, to me, represents perfect love and renewal, and seeing them bloom always feels like a fresh start. Do tulips close at night? Tulips don't seem to close completely at night in my experience, but they do become a bit less upright, which gives them a softer look. Can I grow tulips indoors? Growing tulips indoors, I've successfully forced bulbs in pots, keeping them in a cool, dark place until they sprout, then moving them to a bright spot. How long does tulips bloom? Tulip blooms in my garden typically last for about 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the weather and the variety. How to grow tulips in water. I've tried growing tulips in water, and while it's a fun experiment, they generally need a soil medium for long-term growth and to develop strong roots. Can tulips survive frost? Tulips can survive light frost, but in my experience, hard freezes can damage the blooms, so covering them during extreme weather is a good idea. Do squirrels eat tulip bulbs? Squirrels seem to have a taste for tulip bulbs in my yard, often digging them up despite my attempts to deter them with various remedies. Tulip versus rose. When it comes to tulips versus roses, I've found that tulips give a cleaner, simpler look that brightens up my garden with their vibrant colors, while roses have always added a touch of classic elegance and fragrance that makes my yard feel more luxurious. Tulip versus lily. Tulips versus lilies have shown me that tulips tend to bring a cheerful burst of color early in the spring, whereas lilies, with their tall and graceful blooms, often surprise me with their exotic allure and rich scent that lingers well into summer. Tulip versus daffodil. I've noticed that tulips can be more delicate and require a bit more care, whereas daffodils are incredibly resilient and often surprise me with their bright, sunny blooms even in less than ideal conditions. Tulip versus poppy. Tulips and poppies each have their charm, but I've found that tulips offer a more uniform and predictable blooming experience, while poppies add an unpredictable and wild beauty to my garden with their unique, crinkled petals and fleeting appearance. Tulip versus Arminianism. Comparing tulips with Arminianism is a bit unconventional, but I found that the structured and predictable nature of tulips is quite different from the complex, philosophical debates of Arminianism, which always leave me pondering deeper questions. Tulip versus crocus. In my experience, tulips bring a bold splash of color that stands out beautifully, whereas crocuses, with their early, delicate blooms, offer a subtle but equally welcome sign that spring is on its way. Tulip versus daisy. Tulips are my go-to for a striking visual impact, but daisies provide a charming, down-to-earth simplicity that brightens up any spot with their cheerful, unassuming presence. Tulip versus magnolia tree. Tulips versus magnolia trees show me a stark contrast in scale and presence. While tulips offer a quick burst of color and beauty, magnolia trees impress with their grand size and stunning, fragrant blossoms that make a lasting impression in my garden.